It was a typical morning at the First Horizon Bank in Waco, Texas. The clock struck 11:45 a.m., and the bank buzzed with the usual midday crowd. Men in business suits juggled paperwork and coffee cups, retirees exchanged polite smiles while waiting their turn, and tellers worked efficiently behind their counters. Behind the manager's desk sat Brenda Hartwell, a seasoned bank manager with over 20 years of experience, known for her no-nonsense attitude and an unwavering commitment to the bank's policies. As Brenda reviewed loan applications, the faint creak of the entrance door caught her attention. A man walked in, a little over 6 feet tall, wearing a red baseball cap with bold white letters, "Make America Great Again." His casual demeanor clashed with the usual professional attire seen in the bank. He clutched a small briefcase in one hand and stood in line, his eyes scanning the room. Brenda's jaw tightened. She'd seen that hat before, and to her, it represented division and hostility. She couldn't shake the memory of a heated customer argument last month that stemmed from political differences. Determined to avoid a repeat incident, she whispered to her assistant manager, Diane, "Watch this guy. Let's not entertain any trouble." When it was his turn, the man approached Brenda's desk directly. "Good afternoon," he said, offering a polite nod. "I need to make a withdrawal from my account." Brenda glanced up briefly. "Do you have your account details and ID?" she asked curtly. The man replied, placing both items on the desk. Brenda scanned the documents, her initial skepticism deepening. The man's name wasn't familiar, and the hat, she couldn't focus on anything else. "I'm sorry," she said finally, sliding the papers back toward him. "We won't be able to process your request today." The man blinked visibly, taken aback. "Excuse me, is there an issue with my account?" Brenda shook her head. "No issue, but we reserve the right to refuse service if we feel it's warranted." Gasps rippled through the customers nearby. The man's expression remained calm, but his tone sharpened slightly. "I'd like to understand what you mean by warranted. I've done nothing wrong." Brenda hesitated, her voice dropping. "Look, I don't want to argue. If you'd like, you can speak to another branch about this." The man paused for a moment, studying her face. Then, without a word, he picked up his documents, adjusted his cap, and walked out of the bank. Whispers broke out among the other customers, some nodding in quiet agreement with Brenda's stance, while others exchanged puzzled looks, clearly questioning what they had just witnessed. But the real surprise was yet to come. As the man stepped outside, the heavy glass door closed behind him with a dull thud, leaving an almost tangible tension in the air. Brenda straightened her posture, attempting to shake off the uneasy looks from a few of the onlookers. She was confident in her decision, or at least that's what she told herself. Diane leaned over, her voice low but tinged with concern. "Do you think that was necessary?" Brenda waved her off, locking her office door behind her. She brushed aside their chatter and assured herself it was over. The man would move on to another bank. The morning sun bathed the small bank in a warm glow, but inside the atmosphere was noticeably tense. Brenda arrived early, as she often did, her coffee in hand, and her mind preoccupied with the day ahead. She told herself it was just another Thursday. The man from yesterday wouldn't return. Why would he? By mid-morning, the usual flow of customers began to trickle in, and Brenda's confidence grew. Whatever discomfort yesterday's incident caused had started to fade, replaced by the familiar rhythm of the bank's operations. Then, at precisely 10:30 a.m., the door swung open again. He was back, the same man, but this time, the room seemed to still for a moment. Brenda froze, her heart skipping a beat. Unlike the day before, he wasn't alone. 2 men in sharp suits flanked him, their presence commanding attention. The man himself wore the same red cap, but there was something different in his posture. He moved with purpose, his expression calm yet piercing. Whispers started among the customers and employees. Diane leaned toward Brenda, whispering under her breath, "Brenda, that's Elon Musk." Brenda blinked, convinced she'd misheard. "What are you talking about?" she hissed back. Diane nodded toward the man who was now walking straight to Brenda's desk. "Look at him. That's Elon Musk, the Tesla guy, SpaceX billionaire." Brenda's stomach dropped. She stared at the man, her mind racing. Could it really be him? The cap, the briefcase, the unassuming demeanor. It didn't fit the image of one of the world's most recognizable figures. But as he approached, the resemblance became undeniable. She suddenly felt lightheaded. The room fell silent as Elon stopped at Brenda's desk. He removed his cap slowly, revealing the familiar face that had graced countless news articles and interviews. His gaze locked onto hers. The silence was deafening. "Good morning," Elon said, his tone measured and polite. "I'd like to have a word." Brenda's throat tightened, but she forced a professional smile. "Mr. Musk, He held up a hand, stopping her mid-sentence. "Let's not pretend this didn't happen," he said calmly. "Yesterday, I came in as a regular customer and you refused to serve me. I'm not here to argue. I'm here to talk about why." Brenda felt every set of eyes in the room on her. She struggled to find words, but none came. Elon didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His presence alone demanded attention. "I believe we all make judgments," Elon continued, addressing not just Brenda but the room. "It's human nature. But sometimes those judgments say more about us than they do about the people we judge. This hat," he placed the cap on the desk, the bold white letters facing outward. "It's just fabric and thread, but to some it's a symbol. To others, it's a target. Yesterday, it was enough to deny me service, not because of my actions, but because of what you assumed about me." Brenda's face flushed with heat. She wanted to speak, to explain herself, but Elon pressed on. "I'm not here to shame anyone," he said, his tone firm but not harsh. "Most of the time, people don't mean to judge. It's reflexive. But what happens afterward, that's what defines us." He turned slightly, his gaze sweeping the room. Customers and employees alike stood in stunned silence, some clutching their phones, too awestruck to record the moment. His eyes landed on a young teller near the back, who looked as though she wanted to disappear behind her desk. "What's your name?" Elon asked, his voice carrying across the room but remaining calm. "Well, Lauren," the teller stammered, clearly caught off guard. "Lauren, what would you do if someone came in wearing something you didn't agree with? Would you judge them by their clothing, or would you take the time to understand who they are?" Elon asked. Lauren hesitated, glancing nervously at Brenda before answering. I try to treat them the same as anyone else." Elon nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "That's a good answer. It's harder in practice, though, isn't it?" The tension in the room was palpable. Brenda wanted nothing more than for the moment to end, but Elon wasn't finished. He turned back to her, his tone softening even further. "Brenda, I don't think you're a bad person. I think you're someone who, like many of us, acted on an assumption. But assumptions can be dangerous. They can hurt people. They can close doors we didn't even realize were open." Brenda's voice cracked as she finally spoke. "I didn't mean to offend you. I thought I was protecting the bank." Elon tilted his head slightly. "Protecting it from what? A customer trying to withdraw his own money?" The question hung in the air, unanswerable. Brenda felt her cheeks flush with shame. She wanted to defend herself, to explain that the hat had become a symbol of conflict, that she was trying to avoid chaos. But in the face of Elon's calm demeanor and unshakable logic, her words felt hollow. "Here's the thing," Elon said, his voice rising just enough to address the entire room. "Every action we take sends a message. Yesterday, the message I received was you don't belong here, and I imagine I'm not the first person to feel that way in this bank." A murmur rippled through the crowd, some nodding subtly, others looking away uncomfortably. Brenda's stomach churned as the reality of the situation began to sink in. This wasn't just about Elon Musk. It was about every customer who had ever been silently judged, every person who had felt excluded for reasons beyond their control. Elon leaned on the counter slightly, his eyes locked on Brenda. "The good news is, we can all do better. That's why I'm here, not to punish, but to remind everyone, myself included, that we have a choice in how we treat people." For the first time, Brenda felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this moment, humiliating as it was, could lead to something better. But then Elon did something no one expected. He straightened up and gestured to one of the men in suits. The man stepped forward, carrying a sleek black folder. Elon took it, opened it, and pulled out a single piece of paper. "This," Elon said, holding it up, "is a donation pledge. I've decided to contribute $500,000 to the Waco Community Relief Fund. I understand this bank has been a significant partner in supporting local charities, and I want to ensure that continues." Gasps filled the room. Brenda's eyes widened, her shame now mixed with disbelief. A few employees clapped hesitantly, unsure of how to respond. Elon continued, undeterred. "This donation isn't about me. It's about this community, and it's a reminder that we all have the power to make a difference, regardless of our backgrounds, beliefs, or the hats we wear." He placed the paper on the counter and slid it toward Brenda. "I trust you'll make sure it gets where it needs to go." Brenda stared at the document, her hands trembling as she picked it up. I, I don't know what to say, she whispered. Elon smiled faintly. Then don't say anything. Just let your actions speak. With that, Elon turned and walked out, leaving the room in stunned silence. But the story was far from over. The moment Elon Musk left the bank, the room erupted into hushed conversations and frantic whispers. Customers and employees alike struggled to process what had just happened. Brenda remained at her desk, her eyes glued to the $500,000 pledge form in her hands. Her thoughts raced, torn between shame and an odd sense of relief. It wasn't just about the money, it was about the message he delivered, one that had exposed a glaring flaw in her judgment. Word of the incident spread rapidly by the afternoon. The story was already making waves online, with a few customers who had been in the bank sharing snippets of the confrontation on social media and local news outlets quickly picking up on it. Headlines like, "Elon Musk calls out bias at local bank, donates $500K to community fund," flooded Twitter and Facebook. Brenda's phone buzzed relentlessly with calls and emails from corporate demanding explanations. She spent hours drafting an official statement, carefully balancing accountability with damage control. The bank released a statement acknowledging the incident and praising Musk's generosity, but it did little to quell the storm of public opinion. Meanwhile, the community itself began to buzz with activity. The Waco Community Relief Fund, a local organization supporting underprivileged families, received dozens of inquiries about Musk's donation. For years, the fund had struggled to raise significant amounts of money, relying on small contributions from local businesses and individuals. Now, with $500,000 on the table, the possibilities seemed endless. The charity's director, a woman named Evelyn Parker, called a press conference to express her gratitude. "This donation is transformative," she told reporters, her voice thick with emotion. "It will allow us to expand our programs, support more families, and make a lasting impact in our community. We're incredibly grateful to Mr. Musk for his generosity and his belief in the power of kindness." Back at the bank, Brenda struggled to navigate the fallout. Some of her regular customers avoided her gaze, while others offered quiet words of support. One elderly man, a longtime client named Mr. Hargrove, stopped by her desk after making his transaction. "You made a mistake, Brenda," he said kindly but firmly. "But we all do. What matters is what you do next." Brenda nodded, her eyes stinging with unshed tears. "I know," she said. I never thought something like this could happen here." Mr. Hargrove smiled faintly. "Life has a funny way of humbling us. Use it as a lesson." Determined to make amends, Brenda reached out to the Waco Community Relief Fund and volunteered to help coordinate the disbursement of the funds. She also held a meeting with her staff, openly addressing what had happened and encouraging everyone to reflect on their own biases. "We can't let our assumptions guide us," she told them. "We have to be better for ourselves and for our customers." The small-town incident soon snowballed into a national conversation. People across the country debated the morality of the situation, questioning how often they themselves might judge others based on appearances. Social media was ablaze with opinions, with some praising Musk's calm approach and others condemning the bank's initial actions. But amidst the chaos, one thing was clear. The moment had sparked a deeper conversation, one that extended far beyond the walls of the First Horizon Bank. The days following Elon Musk's visit were a whirlwind for the First Horizon Bank and the town of Waco. News crews stationed themselves outside the branch, eager to capture the humbling of the bank manager or to interview customers who had witnessed the moment. Brenda became an unwilling focal point, her name plastered across headlines and social media threads. But as the noise grew louder, so did the conversations it sparked. The local community buzzed with introspection, town hall meetings, and casual gatherings saw people discussing not just the bank incident, but their own judgments and biases. Church leaders used the story as an example during sermons, urging congregants to look beyond surface differences. Teachers wove the incident into classroom discussions, challenging students to think critically about assumptions. For Brenda, the experience became deeply personal. She spent countless evenings replaying the moment Elon stood in front of her, hat in hand, forcing her to confront the biases she'd never realized she carried. She didn't just feel embarrassed, she felt transformed, determined to grow. She enrolled in diversity and inclusion workshops hosted by the bank's corporate office and encouraged her staff to do the same. The Waco Community Relief Fund flourished with the attention and influx of support inspired by Musk's actions. Other local businesses and individuals began contributing to the fund, many citing the lesson they'd learned from the incident. In just a few weeks, the charity had doubled its donor base, allowing it to roll out new programs, including one aimed at financial literacy for low-income families, ironically in partnership with the bank. Elon Musk, for his part, declined to comment further on the incident when pressed by reporters at a Tesla event. He simply smiled and said, "I think the moment spoke for itself. Let's move on." But the ripple effects of his actions continued. The incident became a case study in corporate training seminars and was featured in countless articles and opinion pieces, each exploring its deeper implications. Some argued it was a testament to the power of second chances. Others saw it as a cautionary tale about the dangers of bias. For Brenda, it was both. She emerged from the experience more self-aware and more empathetic. She'd learned the hard way that leadership wasn't just about enforcing policies. It was about setting an example, even in the smallest interactions. Her staff noticed the change, and so did the customers. One afternoon, as she helped an elderly woman navigate an online banking app, Brenda heard a familiar voice behind her. "Excuse me, Brenda," Mr. Hargrove said, handing her a small envelope. "Just thought you'd like to know." Inside the envelope was a handwritten note. "Pride may break us, but humility can rebuild. You've done well, Brenda." She smiled, a sense of gratitude washing over her. She'd been given the chance to rebuild, not just her reputation, but her values, and she intended to make the most of it. Because sometimes it's the moments we least expect that teach us the most important lessons.